everybody. Jared Jones here in our Californian print exhibit at the Sacramento History Museum. We are going to talk today about early newspapers in California history. But I wanted to show you some items that we have on display in our newest exhibit here. And it involves, one of them is this book. Alex is going to try to probably show from the front there. This book was published in 1835 by Augustine Zamorano. We have a very large portrait of him here on display. Augustine Zamorano is considered the first printer in California. He brought with him a wooden printing press from Mexico City, and he was publishing government documents for the Mexican government. California was controlled by Mexico at this time, and the first book published in California is this book right here, The Manifesto of the Republic of Mexico, written by Governor Jose Figueroa in 1835. So this is the first book published in California, but what does this have to do with newspapers? And it involves the printing press. Because on August 15th, 1846, during the Mexican-American War, Robert Semple and Walter Colton found that wooden common press in Monterey. And they resurrected this press that was all dusty. They said that it hadn't been used in years. They resurrected that press to publish what was known as the first newspaper in California on August 15th, 1846. It was the Californian. It was publishing early accounts during the Mexican-American War. They were publishing both in English and in Spanish, publishing advertisements of the day. It was your standard newspaper, as we've covered many a times before. One sheet of paper, folded. Actually, the first couple accounts were only 2 pages, but it quickly moved on to a 4-page paper set in 6-point font. Now, that's not the first, while that was the first newspaper in California, it didn't last long, and we're going to be heading this way. So I want to talk about the Californian, or the California Star. So the California Star was first published by Sam Brannan. Sam Brannan came to California in July 1846, and he brought with him a kind of similar to the Washington Press that we're going to show, and the California Star in Yerba Buena, which is now known today as San Francisco. It rivaled the Californian for many months, and it wasn't until 1848 that these newspapers really became famous. On March 15th, 1848, the Californian publishes the first account of gold in California in a small little advertisement, or just below a small advertisement on its second page. A week later, Sam Brannan's California Star publishes of gold. But when Sam Brannan found out for himself, he started to publish lots of newspapers that he wanted to distribute internationally. Because here we have a map of California. California was a military protectorate at this time in 1848. This is after the Mexican-American cut off from the war. And the newspaper, after all, though, is what spreads the word of gold. Sam Brannan had hired Nathaniel Hawk in April 1848 to travel overland heading east with 2,000 copies of the newspaper and handing them out to everybody along the trail heading to Oregon, and to try to encourage people to go to California instead. And it works. And eventually, a copy of that newspaper is published, arrives in New York, and the New York Herald publishes an account of gold in the summer of 1848, and it helps contribute to President Polk's announcement of gold in California in his December 1848 proclamation announcing gold in California, which really causes the world to rush in, especially from the United States, heading to California. And it was first published in California to head east, and it took 6 months for people to get to California, which is why they are known as the 49ers and not more about what happens to these newspapers. Because the Californian ceases operation in June of 1848, in November 1848. They couldn't keep the printers working. They abandoned their posts. The typesetters left their composing sticks in offices. And a man by the name
Problem with internet. So
heading this way here down to our print shop. So Edward Campbell purchased the California Star and the Californian, and he merged the two newspapers together to start what was called the Weekly Alta California. It was still to be published weekly, but they only needed one newspaper or one printing press to publish this newspaper. So what happens to the other one? And it is Edward Campbell who takes the older printing press, the same printing press that was used to publish that first book in California shown at the beginning of this program. He brings it to Sacramento. And we're going to come over here to our print shop to talk about the first newspaper in Sacramento. Our printing office behind me here is essentially set up how a printing office would have looked in the 1850s, 1860s. And the printing press that I'm going to demonstrate is our Washington hand press. I'm going to come through here. You're going to join me at that spot there. This is our Washington hand press, manufactured in 1852 in Cincinnati, Ohio by the Charles Foster and Brother Company. It was brought out to California in the 1850s, and this is what we use to demonstrate for a lot of our printing videos. This is an all-iron press, so keep in mind that the press that Edward Campbell will be using to print the first newspaper in Sacramento is still that wooden common press. So, he has the printing press. Where is he going to set up shop? He sets up shop in a small structure at the corner of what is today K and 28th Street, right outside of Sutter's Fort. And the first newspaper in Sacramento is published on April 28th, 1849, and I'm going to print for you all, as a little printing demonstration, the title of that first newspaper. So I have locked here in the form, or in the chase here, I have some wood type furniture all locked together with coins, my inkstone here, and applying just a thin layer of ink using our brayer. The ink we use is rubber-based ink. And I am going to grab a piece of paper here that I want to make sure, just wait one moment, folks. We had school programs earlier today, so we have some stuff moved around. Make sure I have a good layer of ink on there. I'm going to apply a sheet of paper, place some padding on top. We use a stack of old newspaper. It helps create packing to print a more full image, and it also helps protect the press here, which is 170 years old this year, and our type is about 120 years old. But that newspaper that Edward Campbell published on April 28, 1849 was the Placer Times, published weekly. Now, it only lasted outside of Sutter's Fort for a couple months before it was relocated near the corner of 2nd and L Streets. And the Placer Times soon gains a rival of the Sacramento Transcript that started to publish a couple days a week. These newspapers rivaled each other for a long time, and to the point that they were actually cutting costs that affected their printers. And in March of 1851, their printers decide to leave those printing offices and start their own newspaper. And that's going to be the subject of our next program that'll be next week, about the first daily newspapers in Sacramento, because the printers that leave the Placer Times and the Sacramento Transcript go on to found the Sacramento Daily Union. Thank you for joining me here today in our printing office at the Sacramento History Museum. Check out our other videos that we've had of our Find Out More Fridays, and come on by the museum. We're open every day from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Last admission at 4:30. Have a good day, everybody.